Why did the Chinese Communist Party deploy a very powerful naval force into our region further away from home than they have ever gone before? And what was it about?
Well, putting such a powerful task group into the Tasman Sea, there's no real military logic to that because it's not in the way. You have to go a long way out of your way to drive your ships into the Tasman Sea. It strikes me, and I've written about this, that it had a dual and mutually reinforcing objective. One was to strategically intimidate us, which is to say, look, relations at the moment have been stabilised and we've relented on some of our trade measures in relation to wine and lobster and barley and beef. But if you don't toe the line as we would expect, we can do other things to you. Apart from trade coercion, we can actually dominate your near seas, and we can do it in a way that you could do nothing about except for the protection that you think you might have through your alliance with the Americans. So that was the diplomatic and strategic purpose. Mutually reinforcing that objective was the twin objective that reinforces the first one, which is to conduct a military rehearsal. The specific ship that they chose is the most powerful surface combatant in the world, and short of an aircraft carrier that could launch carrier-borne aircraft raids, as the Japanese did in 1942, it's the most powerful warship that they could put into our waters or our near waters. A cruiser, which for your viewers, cruisers are larger than destroyers. They are, if you like, the capital ship of choice, short of aircraft carriers, to undertake long-range missions where the warship needs a degree of autonomy. In other words, it can protect itself against submarines, it can protect itself against air attack, and is designed to then carry out strike missions using the Chinese equivalent of a Tomahawk cruise missile. Most of us would have heard about Tomahawks. The Chinese have got an equivalent version known as the CJ-10 Longsword. They would have been rehearsing their missile crews inside that hull, because they wouldn't have slackened off and just gone to the gym and had early happy hours every afternoon. They would have been working tirelessly to ensure that the missiles in their tubes were ready to fire. They'd run diagnostics to say, right, we're now sailing opposite Amberley Air Base or opposite Williamtown Fighter Base in Newcastle or off Fleet Base East in Sydney. And the captain would have been issuing orders to undertake no-notice targeting of those locations. And they would have run drills without actually firing the weapon, obviously. And how do we know this, John? Because that's what we do. That's what any Navy does. You work your crews hard. You rehearse their main mission. In support of that cruiser was an escorting destroyer to help protect it in case there was a submarine or air attack nearby. It probably had a submarine in close company. We don't know that. The CDF was equivocal about that when he was asked about that in the Senate committee. And it had, incredibly importantly, a replenishment tanker. In other words, it had its own petrol station in escort, so it could go the distance and probably top up some of its supplies. Now, in wartime, that mission would probably be a larger protected group, probably a couple of extra destroyers, certainly a submarine to protect it. And it would have simply sat off the Australian coast and been able to hold any of those targets at risk, be it an air base, a naval base, sensitive communications facilities, dams, power stations. And we would have been able to do very little about it unless we could put our submarines in the water, and that's an open question, particularly in terms of recent reporting about the unavailability potentially of the Collins class. And it would have actually been very hard to strike it with the weapons that we currently have. This is deeply concerning. It leaves us as vulnerable potentially as Australia was back in Deacon's day, but Deakin at least had the foresight, the fortitude, as we talked about earlier, to commission the HMAS Australia, which was a battle cruiser, which was able to, in effect, terrify the Germans out of our waters. I don't think we've got the courage to do that now.